Let us begin with a very simple idea. Imagine yourself sitting nearly 4,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia. The air is warm, the city is alive with the sounds of animals, merchants, and workers. People are carving symbols into clay tablets, recording everything from business transactions to poetry, and among those records lies something you might not expect: humor. Yes, even then, people laughed, teased, and made jokes. And one of those jokes, written down around the year 1900 BC by the Sumerians, is officially the oldest joke we know of today. It says, something which has never occurred since time immemorial: a young woman did not fart in her husband's lap. Now, at first, you may chuckle, you may raise your eyebrows, or you may even feel a little awkward at the bluntness of it. But hidden in that line is an extraordinary truth. Humor has always been with us, and people thousands of years ago laughed at the same sorts of things we still laugh about today. This single line does more than make us smile. It connects us directly to the Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations, who invented writing, built cities, and created myths that still influence culture today. And yet, even with all their sophistication, they weren't so different from us. They also told crude jokes, they also poked fun at the realities of family life, and they also enjoyed the relief of laughter. That clay tablet is not just an archaeological artifact, it's proof that humor is one of humanity's oldest survival tools. Why is that important? Because humor tells us something about human nature that no history book of kings and battles can capture. It shows us how people really lived. Think of it this way: when you hear about ancient temples, palaces, or laws, you are seeing the official record of a civilization. But when you stumble upon a joke, suddenly the people of the past stop being distant figures and instead become relatable human beings. You can almost hear the Sumerians laughing together, sharing that same sense of awkwardness and playfulness that still exists between couples today. It bridges the enormous gap of time, but this discovery also raises questions. Why would the Sumerians consider this funny? Why record it at all? If you think about the structure of the joke, it's not really a punchline in the modern sense. It's closer to a proverb or a witty observation. It's saying that no matter what, women will always behave in a certain way, even in intimate, everyday situations. The humor comes from exaggeration and from pointing out something that everyone recognized as true in their daily lives. And that is the genius of humor across history. It takes the ordinary and makes it funny, universal, and memorable. Now let us zoom out and ask, what does this tell us about the history of humor in general? Humor is not just entertainment. It is also a social glue, a way of coping with difficulties, and a tool for survival. In ancient times, life was harsh. People struggled with disease, floods, wars, and famine. In those moments, laughter could relieve tension, it could strengthen bonds between people, and it could offer a break from the constant weight of survival. If you think about your own life, how many times has a simple joke broken the ice, made a stressful situation bearable, or reminded you not to take everything so seriously? The Sumerians were no different. Historians have found other examples of ancient humor too. In ancient Egypt, for instance, there are texts that playfully mock pharaohs and politicians. In Greece, comedy was considered an art form, and playwrights like Aristophanes used humor not only to entertain but also to criticize society. In Rome, jokes were written into graffiti on the walls of Pompeii, little reminders that even in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, people laughed, flirted, and teased each other. All of these examples show us that humor is one of the oldest and most consistent features of being human. So why does this matter to us today? Because it reminds us that the things we laugh about connect us across time and culture. When you laugh at a silly meme on your phone, you are participating in the same tradition that began thousands of years ago in Mesopotamia. When you joke with your family at the dinner table, you are continuing the same practice that Sumerian families once did around their fires. This is not just about laughter. It is about continuity. Technology changes, governments rise and fall, but humor remains. Another fascinating point is how humor reflects social structures. The Sumerian joke makes fun of a woman's behavior in marriage. Some may argue that it reflects male-centered humor, poking fun at women in a way that reinforces certain expectations. That's important because it shows us how jokes also reveal the values and hierarchies of the time. Humor has always been double-edged. It entertains, but it can also reinforce power, expose hypocrisy, or challenge norms. Think about modern times. Comedians today often use jokes to criticize governments, question traditions, or highlight injustices. In that sense, the role of humor hasn't changed, it still speaks truth in ways that are safer, lighter, and more acceptable than direct confrontation. But let us go back to the Sumerians for a moment. They lived in one of the earliest urban societies. They had writing, irrigation, laws, temples, and myths about gods who controlled the universe. And among their great achievements, they still left room for jokes. Isn't that beautiful? It means that no matter how serious we think history is, real life was always more complex. People laughed, they teased, they found joy. And if the oldest joke ever discovered was about a bodily function, well, maybe that tells us that human beings have never been as dignified as we sometimes imagine. We've always had a silly side. This also tells us something about memory and legacy. That clay tablet could have recorded anything, a law, a transaction, a hymn. But what survived is a joke. A line of humor managed to cross 40 centuries and reach us today. Doesn't that say something about what really lasts? Technology changes, empires collapse, but laughter continues to echo. Perhaps humor is one of the most durable parts of culture because it's so deeply tied to the human condition. Let us also consider the psychology of it. Why do we laugh? Scientists suggest that laughter releases endorphins, reduces stress, and builds trust between people. From an evolutionary point of view, laughter may have developed as a way for humans to bond in groups, to show safety, or to communicate shared understanding without words. So when we see a joke on a Sumerian tablet, we are not just looking at words, but at evidence of human survival mechanisms at work. They laugh to live, just as we do today. Imagine for a moment a group of Sumerians sitting together. The air smells of clay and smoke. They are tired from working the fields or trading goods. Someone recites that line about the young woman and her husband. The group bursts into laughter, nodding, shaking their heads, maybe even repeating it to others later. It becomes a proverb, a saying, something they all know. Fast forward thousands of years, and we too are laughing, even if awkwardly, at the same joke. That is not just history, it is a human connection. Now think about your own life. The jokes you tell today, the memes you share, the playful teasing between friends, these are all part of the same continuum. They may never be written on clay tablets, but they reflect your world, your culture, your values, and your struggles. Someday, perhaps, people will look back at our humor and find it just as revealing as we find the Sumerian proverb, and that is why humor is more than just entertainment. It is a record of humanity itself. From ancient Mesopotamia to the digital age, from clay tablets to smartphones, humor remains one of the purest expressions of what it means to be human. So the next time you laugh at a silly joke, remember, you are not only enjoying the moment, you are participating in a tradition that is as old as civilization itself. You are part of a story that began thousands of years ago when someone took a clay tablet, carved a line about marriage and flatulence, and unknowingly gave future generations a reason to smile. That is the true power of humor. It transcends time, it survives history, and it reminds us that despite everything, people have always found reasons to laugh.